諸星あたるくんがインベーまずは抱きしめんと捕まえた彼捕まえてやるわ
When the Oni, an alien race, threaten to occupy Earth, they agree to stop provided a randomly selected human wins a game of tag versus Lum, the attractive Oni leader's daughter. Hello and welcome back to our channel iSky. Today we are going to do a recap of the anime series called Episode 1. As Ataru tries to talk to Shinobu about his emotions for her, several Oni dreadnoughts, all headed by Lum's father, start to invade the Earth. At that moment, Shinobu and Ataru's mother walk up to them and say they were worried about him. Ataru is then stopped by 3 Oni warriors, and Lum's father tells Ataru to sit down because he won't be moving. It turns out that the Oni invaders have picked Ataru to take part in a game in which the Oni invaders will leave the Earth if he wins, but they will take it over if he fails. The Oni's idea of a game was tag. An Oni warps down from the spaceship and presents herself as Lum as Ataru considers this. Then, Lum's father explains the game's rules to Ataru, who immediately responds disgustingly that he will succeed in horn-grabbing Lum within the allowed 10 days. Oni is on one side of a stadium the next day, with people on the other. Ataru tries to hug Lum right away at the beginning of the game, but she avoids him by leaping into the air. Ataru, who appeared hungry, was being comforted by Shinobu, Keisuke, and another buddy while lying on his futon bed in his room. When Ataru loses his cool under pressure, Shinobu makes a marriage proposal, but Ataru thinks it's a bluff. Shinobu, on the other hand, asserts that she is being truthful, and Ataru takes this to heart. On the game's final day, Ataru desperately tries to capture Lum and succeeds in grabbing onto one of her legs. However, Lum follows by electroshocking Ataru into obedience before leaving. Ataru claims he was just attempting to talk to Shinobu when Lum confronts him in his room, blaming him for cheating on her and telling him he's not allowed to. He breaks up with Lum after startling him one more time and departs from his room. Ataru then disagrees with his mother, and his father makes an effort to divert their focus by bringing up a missing plane in the news. Later, Ataru makes contact with Shinobu once more. Lum again interrupts, but Ataru can persuade Shinobu to give him a chance. The helicopter hovering overhead vanishes as Lum, agitated by this, intensifies her radio jamming signal. Ataru is watching the news coverage of the incident on his phone at the moment it happens. Ataru resolves to leave his home to meet Shinobu in person because he is now adamant about doing so. As a result, Lum starts a violent thunderstorm outside. Ataru's father gives him an old raincoat that he used to wear as a child before sending him outside. When they become separated, Ataru tries to find Shinobu but accidentally snatches Lum, causing Shinobu to strike him in the head with a phone pole. As Ataru is unable to make amends with Shinobu, she is ultimately held accountable for the destruction of the city and the 2 missing aircraft. Episode 2. At school, teacher Onsen reads a book aloud in English before scolding Ataru for interfering with the lesson and throwing a piece of chalk at him. After the incident from that day, Ataru is later seen to have made apologies to Lum. Ataru rejects it and tells her to go, but Lum gives him a surprise hug instead. The following day, Ataru tries to eat a meal in secret at the Cat and Capital Diner. She then claims that her anatomy revealed all to her regarding him. The woman afterward claims to have never met someone as unfortunate as him in her years as a shrine maid while panting heavily in a park. Later, Ataru tries to run once more inside a special room in Sakura's house. But Sakura, who now has a sizable canker sore brought on by a decaying tooth, once more stops him. Due to the pain from her chipped tooth, Sakura is unable to exorcise Ataru, and her strong negative aura conjures a swarm of yakai that swarm onto Ataru. Sakurai continues her exorcism without giving a thought to the yakai, but she fails once more and develops a headache. Ataru wakes up from his nap and asks for the nurse's number, which causes Lum to startle him in the Reaper. The nurse entered his room to ask him a question. Ataru meets with Cherry to ask him to deprive Lum of her powers after Lum shocks Ataru into submission for cheating on her once more. After that, Satoshi and Ataru...
チェリーからの手が
Ataru pursue Lum as she tries to take flight. Akira approaches Lum and inquiries about her well-being. Lum tries to shock Akira by grabbing his hand, but to no avail. Akira confuses the situation as a result of the action and declares his love for her. To Ataru's dismay, both Akira and Satoshi insist on staying at his house that night and guarding Lum until she recovers. Lum's rejection. Ataru then starts to fight with both Akira and Satoshi, and after a fight, Ataru throws both of them out of his room. Lum gives his approval to the deed, praising Ataru for what he did and insisting that they sleep together that night. Furthermore, Lum makes a lifelong commitment to Ataru, which worries Ataru, who then orders Lum to take the ribbon from her horns. Lum Lum, however, objects, and a conflict between them results. Akira and Satoshi overhear this and enter Ataru's room to stop him from doing what they believe to be indecent toward Lum. Akira is struck in the chin by the box, which opens to reveal the letter within. When Ataru finally takes the ribbon off Lum's horns, Lum delivers him a well-earned shock and swears to treat Cherry the same way. Did Mendo inform his grandfather that he is going to study while simultaneously jumping to Tomabiki High School from an airplane? Episode 3. Mendo is waved off by his grandfather as he jumps out of an airplane to go to his new school. Girls in Class 2-4 surround Mendo and question him about his family history. Following her response, Mendo notices Ataru annoying Shinobu by biting onto her desk, and she reprimands him for it. Ataru, the Lummox, is subsequently asked to go when Mendo welcomes Shinobu, but he refuses because Shinobu is his girl. As Mendo hops on Ataru's back and grabs Lum's arm while warning her about the peril of flying in the air, Lum shockingly announces to Ataru that he is her fiancé. Lum breaks free of Mendo's hold, explains that she is not a schoolgirl, introduces herself as Lum, and says that she is married to Ataru. Mendo feels upset upon hearing this. Lum then takes a nap on a tree limb as Onsen declares that their class will elect a class committee and poses the query of who wants to be class president. Upon being prodded by a few students sitting in the back of the class, Mendo immediately offers himself as a volunteer and shares his vision with the class. Then a duel is decided by accurately firing an apple that has been placed on top of the opponent's head with a cannon, like the Mendo family does, to propose a duel in accordance with the established custom. When several of the boys from the class arrive on the rooftop and see Mendo unconscious, they assume Ataru won the duel and shock him to the ground in anger. Lum is perplexed by this, but Ataru guffaws her and claims full credit. The class is then given the responsibility of developing relationships with one another in order to foster camaraderie. Ataru, who had wanted to spend time with Shinobu, chooses to stay with Lum. Ataru first objects, but after realizing that caverns are typically dark, he decides to go along and asks Shinobu along in an effort to kidnap Shinobu while they are inside. Similar plans were made by Shinobu, Lum, and Mendo, although they were focused on different people. With a torch, Mendo guides the group into the tunnel. When they reach a fork in the cave, they follow Ataru's plan and split into two groups. Mendo and Ataru ultimately end up not receiving the girl they sought for themselves. When they come together, Reduce expresses his contempt towards Ataru. The group then goes backward till Mendo's torch runs out. Lum utilizes her electric abilities to light up the region after becoming frustrated with their situation. As a result, what appeared to be a spaceship activated and began to sail towards space. The spacecraft that took off was now orbiting the Earth, and a young woman was sleeping in one of its pods. Episode 4. When Lum hits the ball outside the court during a tense tennis match, a bunch of Crow Tengu drop the sleeping pod they were carrying and tumble down the hill into their elder. Mend and Ataru are landed on top of the sleeping pod on the tennis court, and they fall in love with the woman within. They tell their elder that they have found a perfect candidate for their queen when the Crow Tengu approaches and forcibly awakens him. The elder reveals that Men would like to take Princess Kurama as his bride and that she is looking for a groom. The Crow Tengus attempts to awaken Kurama after opening the pod by kissing Men. The Crow Tengus and Lum then convene a conference to discuss the events surrounding Princess Kurama. Though Lum tries to assist, the elder insists that Men be Kurama's wife in accordance with the custom that states that the person who awakens her and kisses her must also be her bride. When the elder chooses to tell Kurama the truth, he is shocked to find out that she is going to look for Men, who was with Ataru and Shinobu carrying out their roles as class president. Soon after a storm strikes the classroom, the Crow Tengu shows up and gets Men to agree to date Kurama. After it was resolved, the two created their own love nest. Mendo gets dragged into the nest by Kurama despite the scorn of the other girls in their class and his second thoughts on the topic. A hog-tied Ataru enters the nest and, along with the elder, relays the stunning news to Kurama that he had actually kissed her. Kurama wants to stay with Mend, but the elder urges her to uphold their clan's customs. However, a satellite is set up to reach the computer from their home planet to find out the response because the penalty for violating said tradition is unclear. They learn the real meaning of the tradition and its sentimental nature from the first-generation elders. Kurama destroys the satellite in a fit of rage after learning the truth. Mendo comforts Kurama there until Ataru traps him with a bell and displays the pitiful side of Mend, which causes Kurama to lose interest in him. Kurama leaves to look for a partner who lives up to her standards after feeling liberated from having to follow the customs of her tribe. And that's all for today, guys. If you liked the recap and want more summaries like this, consider subscribing to our channel.